Instruction, golf news, equipment, travel, interviews, course profiles, and more. Your weekly fix of all things golf is about to begin. It's the Flagstick Podcast with your hosts, Jeff Potter and Scott McLeod. Hello, friends. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's how you intro the Flagstick Podcast during Masters Week with a nice quiet hello, friends. Yes, this is Jeff Potter, and with me as always,
not Jim Nance.
and with me as always is my good friend Scott McLeod, and we are here with you for Masters Week of the Flagstick Podcast. Welcome in. We're sure that everybody's cuddling up to their TV or their computers or their iPhones or whatever, their app, getting the deets in, getting the deets. This is the Flagstick Podcast. Yes, I am your host, Jeff Potter, and with me, as always, is my good buddy Scott McLeod. Flagstick Podcast this week brought to you by Golf PEI. Golf Prince Edward Island is a premier Canadian golf destination boasting the most number of golf courses per capita in the country. With over 400 fairways closer than you can imagine and exquisite culinary experiences and top-tier accommodations, it is the easiest golf vacation you will ever book. Book your golf vacations at golfpei.ca.
Harder to say than it is to book, right?
I know sometimes. Well, sometimes it gets like they do get to be like a little bit of a tongue twister when I'm saying them. Even though I've said it like a lot.
All good.
Anyway,
just bug it in.
Obviously, we want you to be following us across all of our social media platforms. I think that's very important for you and for us. Instagram, X, TikTok, and Facebook. Please subscribe on Spotify, Audible, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcast. And obviously, as well, we encourage you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like us and click the notification bell to make sure you never miss a single episode or anything that these two donkeys want to say, which is a lot most of the time. Okay.
More academy tips coming.
Yes, more academy tips. I just saw my inbox. There are 6 new ones. I watched all 6, and I like what you did. Very nice, very nice. I think our audience will like what you did as well. So you'll have to visit flagstick.com, or you'll have to subscribe to the Flagstick Digest newsletter, which is probably the smartest thing you've ever done as a golfer.
Clearly.
That's, I mean, obviously.
And free.
And free. Yeah, anything free as a golfer is a good thing. What are we going to talk about on this show? Well, obviously we're going to talk about, obviously seems to be my big word today. I don't know why. What is going on? If it's not, let's dive in, or some other stupid catchphrase. Now I got obviously stuck in my friggin' head.
You got it from me, because that's my bad one. That's my thing I do all the time.
Bonsai. God.
Obviously.
Okay. We're going to talk Masters. Who knows what part of Masters we're going to talk? There's a media guide or something out now that seems to be like a 14,000 pages long with a bunch of facts that most people probably don't give two craps about. But we're going to tell you. We're going to tell you all of it. We're going to go through page by page, line by line. So buckle up, people. This is the 12-hour podcast. Get your pimento cheese sandwiches and your tomato pie, and see if you can't find yourself a Long Island iced tea, because you're going to need the Long Island iced tea, not the regular one for this. So just tons of nuggets.
Yeah.
But you know what? Like the Masters, it starts on the front 9, not the back 9. Although this podcast really does begin on the back 9 like the Masters. Anyway, front 9 brought to you by our good buddies at Metcalf Golf Club, Natural Setting, Pleasant Challenge. Contrary to what most people may believe, based on the current weather situation, golf really is not that far away. So it's time to start thinking about the golf season ahead. And I got to tell you, golf at Metcalf Golf Club is the perfect place to start. Get on a membership waiting list, join one of the leagues if you can find a spot, participate in one of the events, many events, but more importantly, save some money on your golf this summer with their very popular game passes. Visit metcalfgolf.com to do that.
You got it.
Speaking
of which, How's your snow?
Right. Ah, my gosh. Like, geez Louise, can we just knock it off already? I
Oh, Mother
realize we got
Nature,
no
please
control
stop.
over this.
I know.
This is not. We can say Mother Nature knock it off, or let's pray for better weather. Okay, forget it. None of that's
Yeah,
going to happen. None of that's going
no.
to help. But this is redonkulous.
I was talking to Jeff James from Loyalist yesterday
Hmm.
morning, I believe, and he was so Jeff is a head PGA professional down there, and sort of runs the show. And he said, "Hey, you know what? 2 days ago, my phone was ringing off the hook, and today." Or yesterday, the day
Crickets.
before, not so much. So, yeah, I mean, we don't have what you have up in Ottawa. We have golf courses that are scheduled to open here in the next few days, and some that have returned to being open that were open already. But yeah, things have definitely slowed down as far as people, jonesing about getting outside and playing. So,
Well,
unfortunately,
I mean, I get it. It's Masters weekend. You kind of have that. I mean, a lot of golf courses try to sort of target this weekend as a good date if they can. But realistically, I mean, come on, we live in Canada.
yeah,
This is
yeah,
Canada, or the 51st state of America, however you want to put it.
no,
Um,
never.
that's just bonehead. That's
Anyways,
not even going to go politics, but
let's not.
no, we do play golf a little bit later, so let's just settle down, okay?
Yeah,
Settle down. We know what this weekend
yeah,
is. It's Green Jacket weekend. Settle in, chill out, enjoy the
yeah,
cold weather, put the fireplace on, hook up in your butler cabin, and watch yourself some Masters, because that's what I'm doing. I
yeah. Just
can't see
real.
myself doing a whole lot else this weekend. Although the invite came down.
Yes, it did.
Thank you, Gavin, from our good friends at Accra Golf, True,
Yep.
True
Temper. Yeah.
Temper. That the invite came down. He was listening, and I am invited to the Accra party, Masters party down in Kingston. Now, will I make it down? Let's see. Not sure.
There
Not sure. But the invite came down, and I'm grateful for that. So I feel like I'm on the A list of celebrities in the
you
golf
go.
world now.
You moved.
I
You
can
moved
hang
up.
with Gavin and Kenny and Scotty Mack and the whole crew. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of exciting for me. Sort of. It is very
Hey,
exciting.
there you go. Thanks, Gab.
One way or another, I'm watching the friggin' Masters.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, for sure. All right,
All
let's
right.
get to it.
So, okay, listen.
Oh no, no,
Yeah,
no.
she did it again.
Oh no.
She did it again.
I just looked at the
Now
notes.
you said to me, okay, we're talking about Paige Spiranac and again, and you said to me she's on permanent block, and I
I've
say I'm not putting her on permanent block. Number one, because I do like her,
she has no value to my
but
feed.
I can't put her on permanent block because most of what she says becomes show fodder for me.
Fair enough.
So I gotta leave. I gotta leave because she says things that just I know
Make you
she's
shake your head.
well, and sometimes you wonder, are they saying it because they truly believe it?
Sure.
Are they saying it because they don't actually know, or
She's
don't,
just she's just trolling
or
you
she's just trolling me?
specifically.
She's trying to get me to pay attention to her. Well, anybody that knows Paige Spiranac, she doesn't really need to say a whole lot to get you to pay attention to what she's doing online. But the point is, so I wish I could play the clip, but anybody that's on the TikTok machine, TikTok a lot, uh, check out her take on slow play, in particular the tees that you should be playing. And she made the statement that the pace of play on golf courses is slow, and one of the biggest ways that they can fix the pace of play is by encouraging people to play from the correct tees. Okay, now that in itself, I'm not saying is an incorrect statement or anything particularly wrong. It's an opinion. I don't think necessarily that the tees you play from is going to help pick up the pace of play. I think that that's just something that you inherently are quick at or you're not quick at, regardless of your skill set or your tees. But she made the statement that if you're not breaking par from the tees that you're playing from now, then you should move up a set. Because if you're not breaking par from the forward tees, you shouldn't move back to the back tees.
What's
And I'm
what's this?
like, I'm like,
What's
what the
this?
heck
So
does
what's
the
the score?
score that you
Yes,
shoot
exactly. Have to do with it.
now, what does the score that you shoot or the
Yeah,
fact that you don't shoot? How many people shoot under par if they played from the fairway?
yeah,
Shooting under par is not about the tee deck that you play from. Whether or not you should be playing from a certain tee deck or not, what should that be based on? And this is probably an argument that can go on in in infinity. What tees should an individual play from? Should the tees that they play from be based on their handicap or their index? Should the tees that they play from be based on how far they hit the ball? Should the tees that they play from be based on the scores that they normally shoot, their gender, their age? What is the standard? The only thing that I can say for certain, in my own personal opinion, is that the tees that you play from, number one, don't necessarily have 100% everything to do with your index. Okay.
yeah.
I have played golf with a lot of people that are 15 handicaps that are quite capable of playing from the back tees because of how far they hit the ball. They hit it far enough and straight enough, then they're going to be in a better position in the fairway for their next shot than somebody else who is a better golfer that hits it 50 yards shorter or 20 yards shorter. So index in itself necessarily doesn't dictate it. The
No,
score that you shoot.
no.
I've played with some guys that are really good golfers that play from the back tees that shoot in the 80s, and I've played with some really bad golfers that from the back tees shoot in the 80s.
Uh-huh.
It changes from day to day, week to week. So it's probably more to do with how far you hit it
Uh-huh.
than it does have to do with the scores that you shoot or your index. And it certainly doesn't have to do anything. And I'm going to say this is my opinion, but I state it as fact. The tees that you play have nothing to do with whether you can break par or not.
Oh no,
Because
it doesn't.
less than 1% of the population of golfers break par.
Yeah, yeah,
Less than 1% are single digit handicaps.
yeah.
So So to think that less than 1% of the population of golfers, less than 1%, like we're talking like probably 0.2% that break par on a regular basis, you're telling me that those are the only people that should be playing the back tees?
So
Why have
here,
them?
we have a long leaf. There is a long leaf system that's based on how far you hit it off the tee, providing recommendations as far as course lengths. Here's what it comes down to. It's hitting the greens in regulation. And what's the reasonable chance of hitting greens in regulation so that you can potentially putt for birdie on a regular basis? And really for golfers that struggle, maybe from one length of tees and they can't reach the greens anymore, that could be an indication that you need to move forward. But that has nothing to do with the score, or it obviously has to do with skill, but it doesn't have to do necessarily with score. Some people, their score is consisted of highly skilled short games. It's
Yes.
now length will increase your probability of obviously hitting the ball close to the hole, but um but it's not a case of scoring. Scoring is irrelevant as far as that's concerned. I mean, that's not really shouldn't be the primary factor.
No. And it
It's that
certainly
length.
doesn't have anything specifically to do with pace of play.
Well, no, and that would be like sitting there saying gender has to do with what tees that you hit off. Again,
Oh,
same thing. That doesn't matter as well. I mean, we have a good friend, Lisa Longball Luswick. So you don't
yeah, long ball.
long
It's
ball.
right in
Think
the
about
name.
that. Yeah, is
Right in the
exactly it.
name.
So just because she's a woman, she shouldn't be. Again, we're not going to get into all that or whatever.
Mm-mm,
And as far
mm-mm.
as pace of play, obviously, if you're running a 400 yard or a 400-meter race versus a 200-meter race, yeah, distance, time, right? So it can play into it
Yeah, but
to a certain.
some people in that 400 meters walk fast. They
I have
play.
it.
They get to the ball and hit their
That's what I'm
shot.
getting.
And other
That's what
people, they
that's what
can
I'm getting
like,
to.
I could play a four. You know how I play. I
Yeah.
could play a par five
Mhm.
quicker than some people play a par three.
Sure, but that's
Just
what.
and it has
Yeah.
nothing to do with the length of the hole. It has to do
Yeah.
with how much time I spend
Yeah.
over each shot. I get to my ball,
Yeah.
I pull my club, I look, I hit it.
Yeah.
Um,
So what
not
I'm saying, or what I was getting to, is that it can be a factor, but it's not normally the primary factor. Slow
mm,
play as we've seen, over more than anything, it's not about, even just shots taken or whatever. It's the
Yeah,
pace that it's done at. I mean,
100%.
really in the end, slow players are slow players. No, it doesn't matter
Yes.
what they do. It's how they do it. It's not what they do.
Ben Crane take 4.5 hours to play a par three course,
Maybe, but we don't see
you
much
know,
more anymore, which is
and
fine.
Rory Sabatini probably take 15 minutes to do the same course.
Yeah. So, but the thing is, they're no different as far as from a skill. They're both PGA Tour level players and PGA Tour
Yes.
winners, correct? So,
Yes. Okay.
again, it comes down to that pace of the player. So, yeah. Anyways,
All right.
I'm
So that
glad.
was
I'm glad.
fun. That was
I'm
fun,
glad.
Paige. Thanks for that. It's always good for you to help out my podcast a little bit and get
uh,
some conversation started there. And we just spent 10 minutes not talking about the Masters. But you know what?
exactly.
I like that though because it's just it's almost entertaining more than anything else. So I will continue to follow Paige on TikTok and her social media, and she will continue to provide me with things to talk about.
There you go.
And one of these days she'll call me up and say, "Hey, you want to get together for a game?"
No,
I
she
go,
won't.
"Wait," and my response will be, "It depends. What tees are you playing from?" Okay,
All right.
that was funny. You're supposed to laugh at. Not
Okay.
helping me
I'm
here.
not. I'm not
Okay.
enough. I'm not caffeinated enough yet.
All
So,
right. Well. All right. Let's talk about the. Okay. Okay. Before we get to the Masters again,
yeah.
I no. You know what? Never mind. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. Forget it. Forget it. Forget it. Let's talk Masters. That's what this is all about. Is Masters Week. I'm excited.
Nice.
There are no azaleas blooming around here, but as long as they are where they're supposed to be, that's important. Okay.
Now, before we get into too much, or
Okay.
us talking about it, and we were,
We're diverting again. Okay.
no,
Let's
no,
go.
we're still going to talk Masters or
Okay, I
whatever.
like your green hoodie, by the way. That's very impressive.
Thank you. It's
I looked in
Masters
my
week.
closet. I literally, honest to God, have nothing green
Green.
in my
I have
closet. I
lots.
have blue. I
I
have
have lots of
blue,
green.
light blue, dark blue, baby blue. I
There's
look at the
blue.
hoodie. Look at
There's very nice. Oh,
Flagstick
hey, those
Academy.
are sweet.
Yeah.
There's blue water in Augusta, so there you go.
Yeah, but
I was
dye
going to
and all
ask
that.
you,
Yes,
from a viewing perspective, you
viewing.
mentioned off the top there, talking about people, TVs, this, that, or whatever. How much have you been watching the app or using the app,
Not
especially
at
this
all
year?
this year. I don't. I
Okay.
didn't even download it this year, which is crazy because I just, I don't know. I think I've been pretty busy with some stuff, and I
Yeah.
haven't got around to it. I don't
One
even
of
have
the
it up on my screen right now, which is on my computer.
That's almost a sin. I don't
I
have it. I have it
know.
on the TV in the living room, but not here right now. But one of the fun things that's or one of the things that has been fun to watch. Yes, I can talk. That has been fun to watch has been the driving range, and they have shot
Oh yeah.
tracers and data for all the driving range for every player when they're live and they're out there. So they've been tracking all the shots this week. Bryson DeChambeau and Jose Maria Lotharball have been hitting a gabillion shots. So you can definitely see the players that are grinding away and playing, but you're getting the shot data from all the players on all their shots as they go and they play. And yeah, it's pretty fun. A nice addition, especially for us geeks who want to
Yeah.
look at all that data or whatever. But that's been fun to watch. So I mean, it continues to be kind of the best app in sports, and it just gets better and better every year. Every year.
We are
So
geeks when it comes to the Masters. There's no question about that.
oh yeah, I think a lot of people are. I mean, here's the thing. I think it's the only thing that I ever hear my mother-in-law talk about golf. She watches the Masters. And
Yes.
I had a good laugh because I was talking to my parents on the weekend, and my dad's older sister says to him, "Oh, I can't wait for the Masters on the weekend." And they're like, my parents were both golfers, or whatever. They kind of looked at her, and I think their jaws were on the ground, and they were in shock, going, "What the heck?" Like
Yeah,
she's no relationship with golf at all.
but the
And then,
Masters.
but the Masters,
And
she
she
watches the
probably wouldn't
Masters.
do the same thing about the Open
Oh
Championship and the
no,
U.S.
nothing.
Open, and
It's the
definitely not the
only
PGA
the only
Championship.
thing. Doesn't watch
The the
any other
Masters.
golf. Just watches the Masters.
And I bet you there's lots of people like that just they everybody just gets pumped up for the Masters. I don't
I
know if
think it's
it's the
the
fact that there is so much lead time into it as the first major of the year that it's the one that's sort of promoted more. Because when you think about U.S. Open, Open Championship, there's only like a month in between those. Like once
Mhm.
the Masters happens,
Yep.
that's April. Then the U.S. Open's coming in June, and then
Hmm.
and
I
the
don't. I
Open
don't.
champ, and then the
I
PGA
don't even know if they're
Championships in May,
influenced.
right?
Yeah, I don't even know if they're influenced that much about that, but I think it's the fact that so many other their friends and family and people they
Mm-hmm.
know are hyped up about it, and then when they watch it, aesthetically it's beautiful. And from
Yes.
that, I mean, I'd have to ask them particularly about that, but I just find it odd that people that don't even golf, don't even watch golf, don't even pay attention to golf, and then all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, Masters comes around and they're watching, which is great. That's
Early
fun.
leader, Zach Johnson, eh?
Oh boy, well, former champion.
2 under through four.
It's
Mike Weir's
really
1 under through five.
good for him.
That's
Good for
impressive.
him.
That's impressive.
Good for him.
You know, I love the one thing about like with the website is you're able to scroll through the leaderboard with the traditional Masters leaderboard.
Yes,
Isn't
I
it?
love that.
It is so
Yeah,
cool.
it's
That
just a
is
better look or
so
whatever.
cool.
So,
All right.
have you been watching any of the final rounds? Like, yeah, you mentioned obviously you haven't had a lot of time or whatever, but I will say one of the things that I did have, not necessarily glued to it minute for minute, but I did have up on screens this week was the final rounds for. I think I watched 86, 2019, 2015, and 2005 on
Mm-hmm.
on YouTube
Lots
because I
of
was
I
having,
have watched lots. Like
yeah,
I've watched a lot of highlight packages. I've watched a
okay,
lot of. I haven't caught all the final rounds, but I've watched a bunch of that stuff.
mm-hmm,
I'm very invested in it this year. I'm more invested in watching golf on TV this year, like as a whole.
yeah,
Just I don't know why this
mm-hmm,
year is different for me from other years. I don't really know. I find myself watching more golf on the weekends, and I find myself watching more major highlights, classic golf, like just
mm,
more. I at one point was thinking I didn't need the golf channel because I watched so little golf, and now I'm
yeah,
starting to watch more golf again, and I'm like, this is kind of. I mean, and it's not because hockey season is winding down, because frankly, hockey season is just
no, it
picking
never
up.
winds down.
You
Yeah,
know, because the playoffs are coming. You
yep,
know, hockey season is going to ramp up even more. I'll watch more
sure,
hockey in the playoffs than I do in the regular season. But
yeah,
I don't know, just something about it this year has just got me. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if I'll play anymore. It depends on what my
I
body
hope
tells
so.
me I'm capable of doing or not doing.
Sure,
But
I just was,
got
just
some new
happened to
equipment coming, so I'm kind of pumped about that.
nice. I happened to be in some conversations with a couple other people, and we were reminiscing a little bit about favorite masters and so forth, and it all really is age dependent in a lot of cases because
Hmm.
you depending on the impressionable time of life for you from a golf perspective or whatever, you remember certain ones over others. They have an impression on you, and 86 continues to be a big
Yes.
one for me, just being I was 16 at the time, and I remember playing golf right after it because I was living on the West Coast, and I went back and watched it, and I was like, man, Jack Nicklaus was, he shot 6 under on the back nine, and he had a bogey on 12. And, he hit a spike mark on 12 that putt should have could have gone in. But, there was five different leaders in the final nine. And it's like, okay, all right. It was as good as I thought it was as
Does it
far as
still
going back.
have that though? Like, I
We
mean, we
talked about
talked
that a little
about
bit
this
last
last
week.
week,
Yeah.
but about it being a major or not, and
Mhm.
I'm not going to dispute that. I brought that
Oh,
up
no.
as show fodder, so just
Sure, of
people
course.
understand. Sometimes you start conversations as a way of getting people going on a topic.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't believe that it shouldn't be a major. I just brought that up to see, hey, well, let's have a discussion about this. But
Sure.
the one thing about Augusta National that has always been Augusta National is the back nine.
Hmm.
Everybody always said that the
Tournament
Masters
on the
starts
back.
on the back nine on Sunday.
Yeah.
I don't really truly believe that that's true anymore.
I mean, I think any tournament is that because it's decided then. But I mean, whether
Right,
it's going
but
whether
Augusta
it's going to
National was
be,
always about especially it started when you got to 11, 12,
mhm,
13, 14 not as much, 15, 16,
yeah,
and then 18. And
and
it's
that,
like that sort of because there were the Eagles were so possible on those
mhm.
holes. I don't really feel like the Eagles are as possible anymore. I mean, it just does it not seem like that to you? Like the whether the hole is just is really long now and the players aren't. as aggressive off the tee. They're not coming into those par fives with short irons or mid irons. They're coming in with long irons and hybrids because they're ensuring that they're in play off the tee more. Like, is
Mhm.
that the product of the
But
way the players play the hole, or a product of what they've done to the hole to make the hole longer and harder?
yeah, I think the agronomy has a lot to do with it, not just the length. The length added to it, but when I went back and watched the 86 one, you can look at it, and I'll have to go back and look because I'm sure I can find the information. But if you look at things like green speeds, for
Hmm.
example, the greens, as fast as they were in 86,
They're not as
it,
fast.
it was not the case. So you've got to
No.
remember that when we're talking about putting, as the speed increases on putts, we now have a situation where the breaks are going to be much bigger. We just don't, we have more time for that golf ball to be rolling, so it's going to be affected by gravity more as it's going. So so a putt that you would hit the same putt from 20 feet for an eagle, now has a lot more break than it used to have, and your probability of making that become less. So as opposed to 86, you could see Nicholas smashing balls into the cup in a lot of cases or whatever. So so some of those things have definitely changed. I think scoring averages haven't gone way down or way up, but I think the course is definitely outdistanced the players' gains, maybe in some cases. But the players are obviously gaining fast. But I mean, I don't know. I think some years you're okay because you have a big finish. But again, you can't guarantee that. You can't make the
No,
script up,
no, no, no.
unfortunately. So I mean, and even years where you have like, if we go back to like 2015, and Jordan on a big run, makes 28 birdies. It's exciting because obviously he's only 21 years old at that time.
Hmm.
Those are some of the factors where the hype is sort of there, right? So that
Yeah.
excitement sometimes comes from the possibility of what could happen. Whether it's Tiger in 2019, oh, him coming back this way. Maybe the ones that let's look at one like a Danny Willett in 2016. Obviously, not as exciting for the North American crowd because they don't even know who he is.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, so by the time you get done, people are like, yeah, all right, maybe that wasn't that great or whatever. So again, I think it's a lot of circumstances. I don't think it's just the play. I think
Hmm.
sometimes it's who the characters are in the script,
Yeah.
and what the discussion is. Because think about it this year, if all of a sudden it comes down to, you know, if it comes down to Scotty and Rory, and they're way ahead of everybody and nobody else has a chance, well, sometimes you would say, oh, well, there's only a 2 horse race. That's not all that exciting. But because it's Scotty and Rory, you'd be like, ooh. And then depending if all of a sudden, like last year, Scotty gets a big lead, does it become that exciting? You're going to win a second jacket, but if you've got a big lead, is it all that
Yeah.
thrilling? I mean, we know that sometimes it might get to a point where, okay, it gets to 15 and we're done. You'll know the player is pretty, and then just walking in. So there's not all that drama. Whereas if we go back to that one in 86, Nicholas gets to 9 under. Norman birdies 4 in a row, has a chance just to make par to get into a playoff, and then makes bogey on the 18th. So you didn't know if anything was going to happen. So I guess it has to come down to circumstances, and that's not always dictated by the golf course. And there's no script.
No, no, and I think you're right. I mean, you're not always going to have an 86.
Right.
That's not
Exactly.
always going to happen. You're not always going to have. I mean, even when Tiger chipped in on 16, that
Mm-hmm.
you know
And
that you know
05. Yeah.
five, that really exciting chain of events there. A lot
Sure.
of other things were going on at the same time that led to him being that chip having the meaning that it had.
Yeah, because Chris
Um,
DeMarco and him were tied, and
yeah,
DeMarco was thinking, okay, Tiger's over the back of the green. I've just hit it close. I've got a chance for a 2 shot swing here, and I can, again, it ended up going to a playoff, which made it even more exciting. But it was the circumstances at that time.
yeah,
If DeMarco hadn't been, close to Tiger, it wouldn't have had any meaning at all. It would have just been him in a cool chip in. It would have
yeah.
been a nice Nike commercial, but it wouldn't have the significance that it did.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I think that's the point is that lots of great things can happen that have impact on the outcome of the event,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of other things have to happen. Molinari chunking it
Mm-hmm.
on
For
was it
19, yeah.
on 15 or 13?
Yeah, 15.
15.
Yeah.
Um, chunking it, and Spieth doing the same thing, dumping it in the water on 12 and then taking a drop and chunking that one into the water. I
Hmm.
mean,
Yeah.
those things don't always happen, but then they all
Right.
ultimately end up that doesn't happen, and anything else that went
Hmm.
on the back nine at the Masters that year would
Hmm.
be irrelevant. You
Which
would have ran.
becomes really important for the Masters and the tournament itself to have so much hype and so much things around it, the build up, the commercials, the press conferences, the par 3 contest, where all that plays into us being excited about it, so that
Hmm.
even when we get done, we're like, oh, what a great Masters week that was, even if the tournament maybe is not exactly what we would hope. So
Yeah.
I got some notes in there from the last 10 years. Anything else jump out from you from those particular
Oh
ones?
my
It's
gosh.
right at the top there. We've mentioned a couple of them here. Obviously, we mentioned Spieth in 15, and Willett in 16, and Tiger in 19, and Scheffler in 22. But any of the other ones there, or is it just kind of we want to move on to something else here?
Well, no, we can get into this stuff. I just wonder maybe we should we got a few minutes here.
Sure.
The the thing is, when it comes to, I look at this stuff, and you look at things like we just talked about with the excitement of the Masters and the back nine and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the number of times that the tournament has been decided by sudden death,
Yeah.
it's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's 11 times in Masters history, the
Yeah.
tournament outcome has been decided by a sudden death playoff.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of that occurred after, in the 2000s era,
Mm-hmm.
oh 03, oh 05, oh 09, 12, 13, 17.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, there was a time when it was an 18-hole playoff, and
Right.
and once, interestingly enough, I mean, this is not coming off the top of my head, by the way, people. I don't have
Yeah.
this is not my big brain engaging in my history buff. I'm reading this off of a sheet of paper, but this actually was decided once by a 36-hole playoff in
Imagine that.
1935.
Imagine that.
1935, 36-hole playoff.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if it was intended for it to be 36 holes, or if it went 18 holes and then they were still tied and had to play another 18 holes.
Not
I've
sure.
got to
Not sure.
think that
Wasn't quite alive then, so I can't tell
no,
you.
but you'd think that the rules would say, I mean, even the US Open, when they have an 18-hole playoff, if it's still tied after 18, they go to sudden death, or they
Right.
used to.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm gonna
it's
say I'll look it up, and then somebody could correct us or whatever. But I'm gonna say it was intended to be 36, because I think at that point they were trying to establish it as the premier tournament. Because you got to
that's
remember,
insane.
prior to 19, well, before that time, before the Masters existed, when we talk about majors as we did last week, I mean the majors were U.S. Open, U.S. Amateur. Eventually it became Augusta, and the PGA.
Yeah,
That was kind of what was going on there. So I mean, yeah, they were probably trying to establish it as something, but yeah, 17 times a playoff, 11 times sudden death. So I mean, those ones would certainly have some
yeah,
drama for sure. I even forgot that Sergio won it in a playoff in 2017.
yeah. I
I
had
don't even
forgotten
know.
that Sergio actually won it, to be honest with you.
Well, Sergio, Sergio,
Sergio.
Sergio, we kind of lost track of it when he
And did you
had it
see the new
open
dress
11.
code for the Masters?
Which
Apparently, you
dress?
have to wear a suit jacket when you.
Oh yeah, the Cam Smith thing. Did you like
I
that?
don't.
I don't know what was
I
going
heard
on.
nothing as to the explanation for this. By the way,
I didn't. I assume there might have been a sponsor involved or something. Who knows?
that was crazy.
Uh,
He actually played a
Sergio
practice
Sergio
round like
beat
that.
Sergio beat Justin Rose, by the way, in that playoff. I had to look that up. So,
Yeah.
um, only one guy has won it twice in a playoff. Faldo.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Sudden death, 89-90 in that playoff. So,
Faldo.
yeah, top of the list as far as the
Interesting.
playoffs. You look at the
89
people
and
that
90
lost.
back to back.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
How
Yeah.
many green jackets does he have? Three.
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 Yeah.
Because the
90,
one that he beat, Greg
96.
Norman, was not in the playoff.
No, that was 96 when he went low, and I think he was 67 and Norman was 78.
Yeah, but Norman had a 6-shot lead at one point, did
Yeah,
he
and then
not?
went
Yeah. Well,
so
I mean, back
anyway.
then I was sad for Norman. Now I'm not.
Not so much.
If now was back then, I wouldn't be sad at
uh,
all.
I loved Norman's play by so much. And then he was probably one of the greatest disappointments of my golf life
Yeah.
of how he went, and even doing interviews. And anyways, we won't get into that, but yeah, I really admired his play, as many people did, and
Yes.
he just never got things done. And man, his record was incredible. His play was incredible. Any of those other playoff wins jump out at you? I'm looking at those losers in there, which
Yeah, I was
again,
just looking at the losers list there, thinking, I mean, some of those names I don't even know, like Finsterwald,
Dow
Dow
Fitzgerald, yes,
Finsterwald, 1962.
yes.
Like, who that guy? Who that guy? Scott Hoke. I was like, I look at
That
some of
was
these names. I think
he
Scott
missed the
Hoke. He used to
four.
have the flat brim hat with the
Yeah,
pulled down over his ears. He
but
had a very
he missed a
upright
four
swing.
footer. He missed a
Yeah,
4 footer to win that. Like he could have won that. Like he let that slip by, and I mean that was just a tough win there.
and I
So
look at some of the ones that lost that have actually won too, like Angel Cabrera
mm,
lost in a, but he's also won the Masters.
sure. And now
So,
he's back playing after getting
oh
out of
frig,
prison. Getting out of prison. So
I
it's a whole
guess the
different
rules are
cup of tea.
rules, right?
Yes, we'll leave that one at that. Adam Scott, I think, was pretty impressive as well. I mean, that one was super memorable, especially for everybody from Australia. That win was something else, and one led to one of the most iconic photos of all time when the photographer chose to take the other direction and shoot back towards the photographers with the sunlight, with him out there like this. I mean,
Yeah,
that was just an incredible, one of the most iconic photos that we'd see from all time.
use a regular
Um,
length putter, Adam.
I think he's
Figure
better
it
with
out.
the. I
Figure
think
it
he's
out,
better.
man.
He's better with the long one, so I don't mind the long one. Before we
Not
get to, and
not a
I
fan.
if we're, I
If you
don't
got a
care
bad if you got a bad back, sure, but
as long as people play the game, I don't care. It does. There's no demonstrated advantage over other players. So otherwise, everybody would be doing it, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
One
Still don't like it.
you mentioned you're fine. You're allowed to not like it. You're allowed to have an opinion. Funny that. I don't know how many minutes we've got left here on the front nine,
We
but
should probably take a break. We got about a minute, so we'll probably
okay.
take a break and
Okay,
we'll
let's
just
do that.
pick up this on the rest of this on the back nine.
Yeah, we're going to talk a
Um,
little bit about the lefties just when we
yes,
get
yeah,
back.
we
How's
should do
that?
that. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, we're gonna stop there for now. Take a quick break. When we come back, more Masters talk on the back nine. You're listening to or watching the Flagstick podcast with Jeff Botter and Scott McLeod. Stay with us, friends.
Hey, loser buys the first round.
You're on.
On Prince Edward Island, we believe in playing your game your way. From the first tee box to the 19th hole and beyond. With over 400 fairways waiting for you, there's always another reason to golf Prince Edward Island.
Welcome back, friends. It's funny the first time is probably not as funny the second time. And I certainly don't
Uh,
have Jim Nance's voice, so let's just move on from that.
Try it at home with your wife and see how it goes, and that will be your barometer. How's that?
How is that my barometer?
I don't
You
know
probably
because
wouldn't even know if I said that. She'd probably like, "What are you doing?" She doesn't
hey,
even
when I
know who
watch,
Jim. She doesn't know who Jim Nance is, and she certainly doesn't know the whole Friends,
yeah,
uh, you know,
when you watch
situation.
when you watch the '86 broadcast, his fresh face is the announcer on 16. He looks like he's 8 years old. I have an answer for you, by the way, but you can do your spiel before I get to my spiel. How's that on our
Uh,
back nine?
yeah. Well, let's. Yeah. So we probably should do that because we wasted a little bit of time here. Um, yes, let's get to the back nine so we can talk more Masters back nine presented by Celtic Golf Center. Now with two awesome locations, one in Kempville, their signature location, and their brand new location down in the Kingston area, featuring both featuring multiple state of the art TrackMan sims. Golf season never has to end. Enjoy a round of golf with your friends. Join one of the many leagues. Get fit for some new equipment. Take a lesson. Celtic Golf Centers have got you covered because it really is all about the golf. Visit CelticGolfCenter.com to learn more, to book tee times, or to sign up for a league. Okay, so let us discuss. Okay, first of all, Scott,
Yes,
you have done your fact checking,
I have. I
and
have found the.
do tell. I don't know what you did to the friggin' show layout document, but it's like all over the map here.
I didn't do
Anyway,
it.
I don't know.
I have dug into it. The Pittsburgh Post Gazette article
Pittsburgh
April
Post Gazette.
from April 9th, 1935,
Okay.
discussing the playoff because it was a, what does it say? Cold-blooded playoff match. Ooh, whatever that is.
What is that? Oh my God.
Ah, it's pretty
Friggin'
funny.
entered John Wick into the friggin'
Yeah,
Jason Bourne. Was that Jason Bourne and John Wick in the
I
playoff?
guess. I will tell you this, it was scheduled to be a 36-hole playoff, and it wasn't much of one in the end. Gene Sarazen beat Craig Wood 144 to 149. Craig Wood
Well, that's a good
gassed.
playoff. It's only 5 shots.
Yeah, Craig
I thought you were
Wood
going to
gassed.
say it was 144 to like 170 or something.
Yeah, I know, but Craig Wood gassed the front nine on the second 30 or second 18, shot 40 on that. Tried to struggle back, but anyways, it was 5 shots, but at one point it looks like it was a ton more. But yeah, the description is hilarious when you start to read it. So
Cold-blooded playoff.
cold-blooded. Yeah, I love the
Damn.
language back in the day. You know how much he won? How much do you think he won? Any guesses?
$1,000.
Oh, a little more than that, actually. Not by much, though.
1,500.
1,500. Craig Wood got 800.
Yeah,
So
but okay, so let's do the relative inflation in 1935.
yes.
Fifteen
Oh yeah.
fifteen
No. No.
hundred
No.
dollars is
Yeah. Yeah. It was. It
that's some
was.
serious coin.
It was pretty funny though. What are they talking about? Kept everybody getting back a stroke and whatever.
Big Sarazen could have retired on that.
Maybe, but
Walk away from the
yeah,
game right then.
they're having a good chat though about some of the other wins. Oh, some guy won $50. Johnny Revolta.
Damn.
Uh,
It's more money than
but
I've ever won playing golf. Actually, that's not true.
no, it's not true.
I
You're
did win
right.
$100
Isn't it
at
125?
or in my pro debut down at the Loyalist Golf Club Pro Am
Yeah,
back in the day. My pro debut.
I think that was the fee for everyone, wasn't it?
My pro entrance and my pro exit in the same day.
guest appearance.
But I can
Anyways,
I can tell people that at one point I was a golf pro
if you like,
or a professional golfer, not a golf
that's
pro.
that's like me having a what was the tour? What was that tour at Great Lakes? No, it
Great
wasn't Great
Lakes.
Lakes. Not in the Great Lakes tour. What was the other one? The On the Links tour. Remember that?
Yes.
I had a top 10 on the Links tour.
Put it in your resume.
No, I will not.
Put it in your resume.
Anyways, I will close that up and go back and probably lead that or read that later because I'm sure it's going to be quite funny. Just the language in that. But anyways,
you wanted to talk about lefties. Now, given that being Canadian as we are,
sure.
there are probably, I don't know the statistics on it, but I would guess that there are a significant number more left-handed golfers in Canada than any place else in the world.
Yeah.
And we're going to be great. We're going to be great with the lefties. I don't know if
and just so happened the first lefty winner, obviously at the Masters,
there's at least 2 billion lefties in Canada, and there's more coming every second. We just keep making lefties.
Oh,
right.
God. Mike Weir obviously won 2003.
Yes, Mike Weir
was the first lefty, and then to win it, and then Mickelson came right after him, and then Bubba. So those are the 3 lefties that have won. But I mean, it's quite funny when you go back and look. I mean, it was a long time for a lefty. Think about that. The tournament was running from 32 to. 32, 35, 32, 32.
You don't even think of how many lefties have actually played on the PGA Tour. Like Bob Charles is the first lefty that comes to mind when you think about going back in history. The first left-handed golfer isn't Bob Charles, but when you go back and you look at the history of the game, the first lefty that comes to mind is Bob Charles, and I think he really was the first left-handed golfer on the PGA Tour to gain some type of notoriety.
I would agree.
Because you're going back into the late 50s.
50s, yeah. I mean, I think he first played the Masters and kind of, yeah. Anyways, would have been the late 50s when he played.
Yeah.
But he had 15 starts. Yeah, he started in 58. He was his first Masters.
Would you
So
say
he was
Bubba's the most successful left-handed golfer in PGA Tour history?
no Mickelson by far.
Sorry. Okay, dumb.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
am I thinking?
Both live now, obviously. And are they in the mix?
And I've had
I
enough
don't
coffee.
know.
That shouldn't even have come out of
Actually,
my mouth.
I know, but that's okay. You're forgiving. We
See,
all
that's what
don't
you get for
remember
wearing
everything.
blue on Masters Week.
There you go. It's the curse. And I mean, we had a lefty win last week on the tour. Harmon, who's in the
Yes.
mix today.
It's
He's
an
tied
odd
for
duck,
first.
eh?
He's tied for first right
Brian
now.
Harmony's an odd duck.
I don't know. He's an odd duck.
He's so small. He's so
he is
tiny.
small. He looks even tinier next to his caddy.
He's tinier than Mike Weir. Mike Weir's a giant compared to.
Yeah, and it looks even funnier when you see him next to his caddy, Country, who's a big dude. So they look like a big contrast.
That spaceship putter. Remember that spaceship putter you had? You had you still have it too. So Scotty, you have a Scotty Cameron.
Yeah,
I used to have one. Remember that thing? Remember that Scotty Cameron putter that I used to have?
Yeah,
I never used it. I just had it.
Futura. Yeah, but
I don't know what it is. I don't know what he's
changed
using.
last week. He changed.
I know
last
he
week.
did change his putter last week.
So he had that CBOS,
yes.
And then he changed to it's a prototype, a ZT within the Spider. It's a Spider ZT,
good
zero torque.
Good thing he changed putters.
Yeah, I mean
maybe if Adam Scott changed to a short putter, he'd start winning.
Have you seen him with the short putter? It does not go well of late, but
doesn't seem to be going well with a long one either.
3, 4. I think he would argue that. So, yeah, we got like 7 guys tied for the lead right now. Live updates that you're going to read later and are not going to be insignificant. How's that? Or you're going to listen?
That's the funny thing because sadly, this podcast is recorded a day before the day of the first round of the Masters and released the day after. So nothing that we say about the leaderboard at the Masters matters right now. Honestly,
that's okay as far as the live stuff. But what it does though is sets up what we're going to.
We should be there live. We should be doing this podcast live from the Masters.
Sure. Okay. It would be nice, wouldn't it? Mickelson has played 20. This is his 29th Masters right now.
Who cares?
So that's the most. Look, it's the most appearances by a lefty. Weir is on his 26th appearance.
I'll let it go because we're talking about lefties. Yeah,
let it go.
Right now.
Some people care. Maybe you don't care, but some people care.
Oh, I care about the lefties. I just don't care about Phil Mickelson.
Well, that's fine. So, but you can't say who cares. You can say don't care.
Somebody cares.
There you go. Exactly. Anyways, other stuff to talk about. Cumulative stats.
There's no shortage of it.
Cumulative stats. So, I mean, I was digging through this 485-page media guide, and it was quite interesting because it's looking at, kind of scoring when we look overall and what are the hardest holes. And I think that may have changed over the years because you kind of look at, kind of rankings and stuff like that. Yeah, what happened here? There's a weird. Anyways, doesn't really matter. But
the term "dig through something" actually really does apply to something like this because it is so big that you actually do have to dig through it.
Yeah.
If this was a 10-page document, I can't see saying dig through it. But given that this is a 42,565 pages of data, you're going to have to cavern your way. Anyway.
I'll give him a lot of credit though for putting this together because obviously it makes it a lot easier.
People are stats guys. Golf people are stats people. They're like statistics.
People.
I like
just
some
sports people in general.
In general, I like some stats. Stats. I hear stats and I'm going, why?
Yeah, I think
some I like.
I think in this case, it's not stats for the sake of stats. I think, the whole point of this is obviously to provide a foundation for us in the media to be able to write stories and to have the context of
factual information.
Right. To have information that we need. But, I'm just looking at the first 13 holes. I don't know why that ended up getting cut out, but.
Did you copy and paste?
Of course I did. But if you look at 11 is now the cumulative hardest hole. So these all-time cumulative stats from 42 to 2024, it is the hardest hole. And in fact,
that doesn't surprise me really. Does it surprise you?
No, because it's gotten longer and longer, and it's probably the longest approach And then you've obviously got that pond that's over on the left side. It's a very difficult
A
green.
lot of guys miss that out to the right on purpose.
Correct,
I was
exactly.
watching sorry, I don't mean to interrupt your
No,
statistic
no,
party here.
please.
But I was watching a little Masters documentary thing, and it was talking about Colin Morikawa not being very successful working the ball right to left.
Right.
And it was talking about number 11, and it was talking about how from the same position basically in the fairway on number 11, Scheffler has the ability to work the ball both directions relatively easy, and Morikawa attempted to move the ball right to left, but or wanted to move doesn't feel comfortable moving the ball right to left, so he's got to aim out over the pond to be able to cut the ball back to the right side of the green. But then you turn it over a little bit and you get the dreaded double cross, and now you're in the water. Whereas Scheffler has the ability to work the ball right to left and starts the ball out to the right. It doesn't move left as much as he wants to, but his misses out to the right, chip it up, make par. So the ability, which just kind of, with the difficulty of some of the holes, when we talk about Augusta National, one of the things that I've always heard about Augusta National, and I think I remember a conversation with Fred Couples before one of the years of the Masters, that you need to have the ability to move the ball both directions to be really successful at attacking the golf course off the tee and for your approach shots. And I think there was an interview done with Fred Couples years ago where he spent a whole bunch of time prior to the Masters learning and working on moving the ball right to left, because obviously we know Fred is a cutter, likes to move the ball left to right, and he worked on moving the ball right to left, and this was right before his Masters win
in '92.
Yeah, so just some useless piece of information that I dug up for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see all the stats on that to see if it varies from what players make assumptions about. But 11, as you say, the highest that it actually was from a scoring was 56. 56 must have been a tough weather year, because I see super high scores. I see a lot of scoring on particular holes, but from the play overall in that particular year. But the one hole that I'm kind of surprised by, and it's one we talked about a little bit in a past podcast, was from a scoring rank, is well 3. Yeah, I'm not surprised by. But here's the thing: when people are watching the scoreboard today and tomorrow and Saturday and Sunday or whatever, and they watch players get off to a fast start, 2 is the easiest hole on the golf course. So you're going to see success there. So even as you watch the early leaderboards and you see players that are through a couple of holes, very often you're going to see, I think I cut that thing off. So don't worry about trying to stretch it out. You're not going to see it.
How do you know that that's what I'm doing?
Because I can
How
see
do you know?
in the live
How
note.
do you know? I'm not sharing my screen. How do you know that that's what I'm doing?
Because I'm in a live document. So yeah, you're always going to see players, if they're going to take advantage of an early birdie, it's always going to be on 2. So despite the fact that it's a 585-yard par 5, it is super, super short. And cumulatively over the years, it has averaged 4.773. In 2020, it actually averaged under 4.5, and it has never averaged over 5, ever, from 42 to 2024 in the history. So if players are going to birdie a hole, and if you see them make a bogey on there, that is a very, very huge mistake. So
interesting. The number 3.
Yep.
That it's the low year was 3.8.
Yeah.
But it averages over par.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though it's only 350 yards and ranks 14th amongst. So it's still one of the easiest holes on the golf course.
Sure.
But it ranks over par.
Yeah.
As on average at 350 yards, which is kind of, I mean, I heard some guys in an interview talking about number 3 and how they play it, as far as the length of it and why it may be a more difficult hole. And
I think it's become more difficult over the years as the green speeds have gone up, because it's a very small green, and you can try to bash it up there as close as you can, but depending on the hole locations, it is a difficult shot, and you can get the golf ball run off the green by a lot. So players don't take advantage of it, despite the fact that it's only 350, which obviously in modern golf that's a super short hole in pro golf.
You were mentioning in 56 that the weather might have played a factor in why the
Yeah.
scores jumped so high. I wonder if number one, maybe weather played a factor. I wonder too if the opposite, like when we talk about weather, maybe we talk about high winds and rain. But I wonder if the opposite, no rain, hard, fast
Oh,
conditions, the way
yeah.
the golf course was kept back in the 50s and 60s
Yeah.
and 70s, where there was no rough to speak of. If the speed of everything, not just the greens and it was difficult. And I remember at Pinehurst number 2 one year where it was really, really hard and fast,
Yeah.
and the difficulty that the players had playing that golf course, even under sunny, warm conditions with very little wind.
Yeah.
So it could be the opposite. It could be wet and rainy, windy, or it could be dry and hard and extremely difficult, if not impossible, to hold those greens.
I'll have to go back and look, but
I know you're going to.
I'm going to.
If we had
But
another break, you'd come back from the break and you'd have it all figured out.
that's what I do.
It
That.
is. Scotty Mac is the stats guy. I guarantee I am the comic relief on this podcast. I am not the stats guy. I like reading the stats.
Yeah.
I'm a
Okay.
big fan of looking them up.
So here's a funny thing that I looked at and I didn't really notice before.
Oh, is this fun fact?
Fun fact.
Fun fact.
The cut actually from 1957 to 1961, the cut was 40 and ties. How tight a cut is that? I mean,
wow.
It became 50 and ties in 2020. And people were like freaking out a little bit because, for a long while it had been 50 and ties and those within 10 strokes of the lead. It was low 44 and those within 10 strokes from 62 to 2012, but 40 and ties. Like, I know it was a small field, but the biggest field ever was, I think, 110, by the way. That answers a question that we had last week when we were talking about field sizes or whatever. But 40 and ties seems awful tight.
Yeah.
Awful tight.
Yeah.
Awful tight.
Now, here's the question.
Sure.
Are we going to sing the Masters?
No, we are not. But did you even know there was lyrics?
Nope. Nope. See, now there's fun fact.
Yeah, and
there are actually lyrics to the Masters theme song. The fact that it has a theme song too.
I know, exactly.
Like, does the U.S. Open have a theme song? Does
the Stanley Cup have a theme song?
Well, there's probably a theme song. I don't think anybody's singing it out loud.
No, but think about that. I mean, people are used to
that's crazy.
Yeah, and it's not the song that you think it is. Like, people are used to that one melody that they hear.
Yeah,
that's the music by a different guy.
Yeah, no, this is an actual song.
Augusta the song is a whole different thing that we probably don't hear that much or whatever. And you do hear it on occasion. They'll play it, every once in a while, but it's different than the traditional Masters music that you hear.
But there was,
by a different artist.
Here's the funny thing. So I wonder if Dave Loggins, like Kenny Loggins' brother or something?
I have no idea, but Dave Loggins, by the way, wrote and performed this song, and apparently he's an award-winning singer.
So back in the day, sports had theme songs, right?
I'm sure,
football teams had fight songs.
Yes, of course,
and they were corny as heck.
Yeah,
but true fans of those sports franchises will sing those songs till their dying day, and they'll teach them to their kids, and they'll go on, living forever. But how corny is that, really? Like, not the Augusta song, like
no.
Like, but for just the whole idea of that, this was a time when there were fight songs, there were sports songs, there were we don't see that anymore.
No, it's just a different era. By the way, David Loggins, R.I.P. He did pass away last year.
Okay.
Apparently, he performed some song. Well, he wrote for a lot of different people, including Anne Murray.
Well, that doesn't surprise me.
But it doesn't seem like he has any relation to Kenny Loggins. But yes, rating his Wikipedia, though, they discuss the theme song from the Masters.
Wow. Now, here's an interesting one. What about who's not at the Masters this year?
What's your thought? Who are you missing?
No Ricky.
Yep.
As good as Ricky has been playing as of late, um, he's not at the Masters. It
Nope.
just feels weird. It's
Well,
Ricky Fowler. Like you
the
just think of some guys,
problem.
you just think of you put Ricky Fowler is in the same to me as like Dustin Johnson, Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas,
What's the
John
difference
Rahm.
between those players, though? You just named three players after him that are all major winners.
Major winners and consistency
Yeah,
over the years. And Ricky had a period
yeah.
of time where consistency was not his friend.
Because
Someone
if
made a
John,
joke about he's not at the Masters because he's recording an episode of Duck Dynasty
oh my,
because of his camo
I get it.
Puma gear, which I think kind of looks cool to be honest with you. But
Just think about it. I think John Rahm is down to 70th in the official golf rankings now because obviously he's
yeah,
playing over on Lib. But what I'm about to say though is that if he hadn't won the Masters,
he wouldn't be
we got
there
a
either.
but we got to look at Bubba Watson. Look at there's a whole bunch of people now. Obviously, they earned their way in there because they've got the wins, whatever. But
Yes,
they might not be there as well. So
yeah, yeah,
that's just the way it
like
is
Patrick
now.
Reed.
Right,
Could
exactly.
do
So you
without
see
that
those
guy.
players, yeah, but players fall down the rankings, and because of the way the rankings are now and don't include live, then we might end up without those players. So that's just
How
the way it
deep in
is.
the rankings? It's the top what in the rankings
You see 50
top 50.
is, yeah.
So Fowler's fallen out of the top 50.
Yeah, but it's at a particular time, and then there's so
Yeah.
many other categories and stuff that have to do with it. So for them to get invites, I couldn't tell you where Fowler is right now. Anyways, besides the point, there was something I was going to mention there, but I kind of forget what it was. I mean, even Homa is dropping hard here right now, but
Yeah.
he is qualified. So subpar rounds in one tournament. This was something I looked at. Like if you think about it, I mean, sub 70 is a different area, area. God, I
Hmm.
can't even talk. But if you think of a player shooting under par rounds in one tournament at the Masters, you would almost
Hmm.
think that would be a critical aspect, obviously, to winning. But it's very limited the number of players that have done it more than two times, for example. To no surprise, Tiger's done it five times. 97, 2001, 2002, 2010, 2019. But the list is pretty slim. I'm sure there's a lot of players that have done it one time, but twice is
Yeah.
tough go.
I mean,
So
it's a tough golf course, and to consistently play well there, year after year.
yeah,
But that
well, I
is
think
interesting. So,
yeah, I think
wow.
that shows you as well. I mean, the disparity sometimes in rounds. I mean, the average amateur is always looking for consistency. Ricky is now
Hmm.
112 in the world rankings, by the way.
Oof.
Um, um, Players, sort of think, oh, I'm not very consistent. And we see that on tour. We see players that all of a sudden shoot 63 one day and 78 the next or whatever. So if those players are not doing it, then the average amateur shouldn't have any high expectations of it. But it's very difficult to shoot 4 rounds under 72 in a major championship. If there was one you could do it in, it would probably be Augusta. If we look at scoring averages, things over the years. But
Well, you're saying, what about career scoring average?
well, yes,
Right.
we get to that. And now that, that one's really interesting because you'll see there's two different aspects of it. I posted in our thing here for players that have played 25 to 49 rounds
Hmm.
and players that have 100 rounds or more. There's obviously categories for people in between or whatever. I think the high mark is, obviously to play 100 rounds, you've got to play a lot of Masters. So
Hmm.
that's kind of exclusive territory. So we don't expect that scoring average to be as low. But what jumps out at you when you look at that?
Tiger's not on that list. The 25 to
Because
49, the 25 to 49 list is Tiger's
he's on
not
the because he's
because
on the
he's on the
100
100 one.
100 or more. Yeah. So look up above over that one. You'll see that there. He's the all time for over 100 rounds at 71.3. He's played 100 rounds at Augusta National with 65 being his low. But yeah, Fred Couples has played 140 rounds and is adding to it this week.
Yeah. Freddie's still relevant. I think Freddie at his age could still win the Masters.
I don't think so. I don't think so now at 75-50 for yardage. I don't know
picked
if
Fred
I
to
don't see
win
that
before
happening.
Rory.
You heard that, folks. Clip it, save it, put it up on your fridge.
It's clipped.
Laugh at Jeff.
This is already recording, so there's no way I can get away from that one.
Wow.
You don't think he could? You don't think you think Rory? I still don't think that Rory's. I just don't see the Masters being a Rory thing. Watch him win by 10.
I hope so. I really do. In a playoff. He maybe he wins in a playoff with Fred.
How does he win by 10 in a playoff?
No. I'm saying
okay.
outside of the maybe I'm saying maybe he wins in a playoff against Fred Couples. The two of them.
Well, then if that were to happen, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter if I said Fred win before Rory, because the fact that Fred's in a playoff makes you all eat dirt.
I don't think
Fred's not going to win the Masters. I get that.
Win the Masters.
He just doesn't. I watched a video of him swinging back in 92 when he hit that shot on 12 and it stayed on the bank. And
I don't know why that all-time cumulative stats thing ended up on every single page, by the way. Anyways, besides the point.
That's one of those things where when I say nobody cares because I don't. It's okay. I like the stat. To see it every page works for me.
Did you see the birdies? Roll on down.
Nicholas career 506
crazy
birdies. Now I would like to see that's the number one guy. I would like to see career other names.
Yes,
Like I'm only seeing Nicholas. I'm not seeing where does Tiger fit in. Where does is it 505 for somebody else or?
I'd have to bring up the full book and have a look at it that way, and it's probably there. This is just I clipped out some certain things or whatever, but the fact that the most birdies is Jack Nicklaus. Now
the most birdies in one single tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Spieth at 28.
Yeah, that was the 2015 one. That was crazy, and the fact that there's just so many. I mean, Phil was close at 25, and Xander, which keep an eye on Xander this week. 2019 he had 25 birdies. It's just about limiting obviously your mistakes that are there. But
keep an eye on Tiger this week too. That could be an that could be an impressive.
Sitting
that could
home.
be an impressive run. You get a back nine charge from his couch to the fridge.
Maybe, but anyways, we won't hate on him for that. He's obviously hurt or whatever. But
we don't hate on Tiger.
One consecutive round. One round. One round.
How do you have one consecutive round?
Well, I guess it is a consecutive round. It's only one, but I guess. But Anthony Kim.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Talk about guys that disappeared off the face of the planet.
Yeah, well, certainly life hit him hard.
I guess so.
But 11 birdies. So. That was a crazy round. I remember that in 2009, and a lot of our audience here is probably not going to be remembering that or whatever. But yeah, it was a wild one. So if you ever have a chance to see the clips or the highlight of that, and the fact that he made that many rounds, it shows you what the talent level was for him at that point. And that's a tie. He had made five. He made 5 more birdies in the next round, so that tied him with Tiger for having 16 in the 2 consecutive rounds. But yeah, I mean, to have that many birdies in a round, and also for like Jordan, 28 in a tournament. I mean, 72 holes and you make 28 birdies. That's
crazy. Think about this.
I'm not sure how many eagles he made. He might have had a couple on those too. Yeah.
Think about this: leaders top finishes. Okay, so Nicholas, most number of top 5s, most number of top 10s,
yes,
most number of top 25s,
yes,
the oldest to ever win the Masters, and misses out on being the youngest to ever win the Masters by basically a little less than a year.
Yeah, because he hadn't. And if people are really wondering how good Nicholas was, go and find his record from the Masters in the 1970s, and it is absolutely insane because again, there's still lots of great players that were playing, and he just dominated this tournament. I mean, his play in the Masters was crazy. That era, that decade, he did not finish outside of the top 10 in the Masters in
Now
the 1970s.
here's an interesting. That's a good fact. Here's an
Yeah.
interesting thing because it's a little timely.
Mhm.
So Alexander Ovechkin breaks Wayne Gretzky's all-time goal scoring record, right?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
by a goal, and probably will add a few more to it, and then
Yeah,
he'll
of course.
retire at the end of this year, and that's my guess, my prediction. Maybe he won't, but and the talk is all about eras, okay, and
Mhm.
how when Gretzky set all these records, these scoring records, it was a lot easier to score. Goalies played differently. The equipment was smaller. It was a lot easier to score on goalies back then. Okay, so let's just say that's true. And then you look at things like you look at football and you look at records in baseball and home run records and the bats are juiced and the balls are juiced and all this stuff. So they make these arguments that the records that are being broken by today's athletes are being broken by number one athletes that have more technology available to them. They're bigger, stronger, faster because of the workout techniques and the training that's available to them. So all these things, everything is better now. So the records that are being broken now are being broken by players that have a bigger advantage. Okay,
Mhm.
as opposed to, or they talk about how the records that were set back then were set because everything was easier. I think that golf is one of those sports that when you look at the records
Mhm.
that exist now that were set back in the day, you can't necessarily say that it was easier back then than it is now because actually in fact with golf I think it was harder back then to score than it
In the
is now. So
equipment.
forget about wins and losses. Okay, wins
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
losses are a
Yeah.
different thing because the competitiveness of the field that you're in, yes,
Sure.
there's more parity in a tournament now than there was back when Nicholas was playing.
Right. Yeah.
Nicholas had to play a field of 100 people, but there was probably only 10 that could win. And I'm exaggerating that, but nowadays you tip it up in a PGA tournament and there's 150 people playing in the field and there's probably 140 of those that really realistically could win or 150 of those could win any given week skill
Mhm.
wise. When Nicholas was doing it with an original, we're talking not the modified Balata balls that they were using later on, but Balata balls, persimmon clubs that were the size of
Mhm.
peanuts,
Yeah.
you know, steel shafts,
Mhm.
leather grips,
Mhm.
courses, the conditioning of courses that were not the kind of conditioning that they play courses now that are well manicured and absolutely perfect blades of grass. They played on, if you watch video, they
Oh yeah, the
played on what you would
greens are
look at and say,
bumpy
my
and
God, these are dog tracks. They weren't, but you would
yeah.
look at them in comparison to some of the really sharp looking parky golf courses that they play now, and they
Yeah.
were not, you're hitting it off of, tight dirt live
Yeah.
fairways.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so the conditions that Nicholas and those guys played in when they were scoring the way they were scoring,
Yeah.
my God, you actually have to think that when we think about who the GOAT is.
Yeah.
Some people would say that Tiger Woods is the GOAT, even though Nicholas has more majors.
Yeah.
But
You
I
can't.
gotta say that
Yeah.
maybe,
Yeah.
that's one thing where eras are not the same. Will you say
Right. You can't compare them. Yeah.
that Ovechkin's record is an era-based record. Gretzky's record is an era-based record.
Right.
Basketball, same kind of thing. Jordan and LeBron, era-based records. Chamberlain. Golf, those records that Nicholas set for wins and low scoring and all those kinds of things, forget about era
Yeah.
based.
Yeah.
If you gave Jack Nicklaus the technology back then that they're using now on those same golf courses, what would he have been able to do?
Like I said, you go back and watch that 86 and you watch, Sebi, Jack, Greg Norman with their, persimmon woods and them
Hmm.
playing in that tiny little ball. And I can tell you, just if we look at like a few times that I've been over to Celtic where Andy has an old TaylorMade burner driver there. And a number of times that he's handed that to people or people like it's there, it's like you hand it to somebody and you get them to hit it. And I mean, they can't hit it anywheres. and that's metal, let alone persimmon. And people, like, you get them to hit persimmon, and this is even with a modern ball, and they can barely hit it.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, the scoring, for him to be able to do what he did with the equipment that he had, and you're right. I mean, it just makes it hard to compare eras, and that's why record books, unfortunately, don't have as much context as they possibly could, because we're comparing stuff. We can't project in our brain that, hey, those players are playing the exact same equipment, so it's a stroke for stroke comparison, because it's not, that's for sure. So yeah, you're right. The ability to score, even though the course might have been shorter, well, it sort of had to be. But as far as the skill, because as you had to hit those persimmons in the center of the face. And if you want to talk about gear effect, hitting it a little bit in the heel and the toe, I mean, you got nothing out of those shots. Whereas now it's like, yeah, you miss by a little bit, you still get a lot out of it. So I dare anybody. So a valid comparison there, just sort of to think of what Nicklaus did over that career. And like I said, if you go back and look at that 1970s record and leading into the 1980s as well, he dominated Augusta. Dominated. So yeah.
All right, I hate to do this, friends.
I know,
but we got to get out, and we got to go watch the Masters. So definitely. We do very much appreciate you being with us on the podcast this week. Enjoy the Masters, everybody. And hopefully it's exciting. And we got something to really glue our eyes to on Sunday afternoon at Augusta. Thank you. And thank you to our sponsors this week, Metcalf Golf Club, Celtic Golf Center, presenting sponsor, Golf PEI. With over 400 fairways closer than you can possibly imagine, top-tier accommodations, and exquisite culinary experiences, it is the easiest vacation you will ever book. So book them at golfpei.ca. Be sure to follow us across all social media, Instagram, X, Facebook, and TikTok. Subscribe on Spotify, Audible, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts. And don't forget the YouTube channel. Like us and click the notification bell. You'll never miss a single episode. As always, we do appreciate you tuning in, but until next week, I'm Jeff Potter.
I'm Scott McLeod.
Remember, always go for the stick.